Hello everyone and welcome to Nervous Nessie. Today I wanted to do a recap of the Universal Studios Orlando trip. And I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of each one of the parks and just some general tips about doing a trip to Universal Studios, all three of the parks. First of all, I'm going to lump Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure together. I felt like both of the parks kind of had the same pros and cons to them. They are two very different parks that have very different rides and attractions and stuff, but I felt like they were very cohesive. They went well together. Probably why you could do the Park Hopper Pass is because, number one, they are next door to each other, but also because you do get the same vibe with the two parks, whereas Epic Universe, that's a completely whole different ballpark. But yes, I do feel like Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure both have the same kind of pros and cons. So let's start with the cons. The first con is going to be it's really hard to get food in those parks. I tried to figure out between the 3 days what the best times to get food was, and whether I tried to get food early or get food really late or even during the peak time when it's lunchtime, I just couldn't get food. It was very, very hard to find food at both of the parks. Now, I do know that there are some restaurants within the parks, not many, but there are some that you can do reservations, but it's hard to do a reservation at an amusement park when you don't know where you're gonna be. I mean, you would hate to sit and not do a ride or do a show or some kind of attraction or, have, something that you wanted to see because you know that in the next hour or 30 minutes, you're going to have your food reservation. So I never made a reservation. I'm sure that if I did, obviously I'd have food and not have a problem finding it, but then it cuts into my time to see and do stuff in the park. So I feel like they should somehow do something, have more food available. I don't know. It was really tough to find food in both of the parks. The second, third, and fourth cons have to do with the rides. First of all, some of the rides are a little outdated. I know the E.T. ride, the Men in Black ride, I spoke on both of those. I felt they were very outdated. It's not that they should necessarily scrap the rides altogether, they just need to do some updates to the rides, especially when you have other rides like Transformers or The Mummy that they are older franchises, but the rides still stand the test of time. But some of the rides are kind of old and it's like kind of a waste of your time to get on them. So I feel like some of the rides they should definitely update. The cartoon area of the park was a little dated as well. There was literally no one in that area. Everyone was just having to use it as a bypass to get over to I believe it was the Jurassic Park area. There's just nothing there. I mean, if anything, tear that area down and put in some really cool ride or a show or something. The second con that has to do with the rides is some of the wait times were kind of long. Okay, they weren't. They were long. I know the more popular rides like the Hulk roller coaster, the Velocicoaster, the Hagrid's Adventure, those rides are just so cool that they're going to have long wait times. But, I mean, to me, I feel like regardless of your age, whether you are young or old, there's a time limit where your attention span and your ability to stay in a line, it just is not happening. And I feel like around the hour and a half mark is kind of that limit. Like, if the line is over an hour and a half, like, come on, you gotta do something. Speed this on through. I don't know how to fix that, but I mean, even when it's not peak season, because I did go to the park in October. That's not peak season. Peak season is the middle of the summer. I can't even imagine how long the lines are in summer. And then when you want to try and ride those rides and you may only have one day at the park and your only option is to spend $200 and something so that you can bypass that line, that just takes the fun out of it. And the third con that has to do with rides that I wanted to talk about is, please fix the single rider situation over at Hagrid's Ride. All 3 days, I was so frustrated by that whole situation. It just put a very bitter taste in my mouth, because it's one thing to have, you're essentially having 3 different lines come together. You have the regular line, the express line, and the single rider line. All 3 serve different purposes. The express is for people who have paid that $200 and something per person and they want to go through really fast. But to me, I feel like that should go pretty fast, because the way the single rider line or the express line works is that you're only supposed to ride the ride once per day. So if everyone buys the pass and they ride the ride once, why is that line so long, all day long? Are they letting people ride 3, 4, 5 times? I mean, what are they doing? Get off, turn right around, get right back on, and just keep going? Because if that's the case, they're letting everyone in that line go, 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 and everybody else is not getting to go. And then you have the single rider line. I feel like all amusement parks, not just Universal, but all amusement parks that have a single rider line should put some kind of stipulation that you can only be in that line if you are truly in the park by yourself. I don't know how many times I get into the single rider line and there's a whole family, 4 or 5 people in the line. And I'm like, get in the normal line. Why are you in the line? The reason they have a single rider line is because, number one, if you have an odd number, if the ride holds 4 people and you have 3, they need to fill it up with that one person. Yes, you could do that by splitting up a party. But the reason you have a single rider line is to kind of, I don't want to say reward, because you're not rewarding the person, but it's kind of a pro for someone who doesn't have anyone at the park with them. Being at an amusement park by yourself kind of sucks, because you don't have anyone to enjoy the fun with. You don't necessarily have anyone to talk to. And so when there is just a single person in line and everybody is by themselves, then it's kind of a little community of people that they are only there by themselves. They know they're there by themselves. And so it's kind of nice to talk with other people who are in the park by themselves, not be stuck between a huge family and a huge family and you're there by yourself. But whether you are in the express line, the regular line, or the single rider line, for that ride, they have got to fix the signage and how it all works. Because when the regular line overlaps and blocks the single rider line, single riders can't get into that line. And when the people that are working there are standing outside the line and telling people, this is the express line, this is the regular and single rider line, they should know whether the single rider line is open or not, so that people aren't getting angry like I did. And the last con for both of the parks, to me, I don't know why this still exists. I do. It's consumerism. But the locker situation. Why are you forcing everyone to pay for a locker at every single ride? I mean, yes, I chose to bring in a backpack. I did not have to have a backpack. But seeing as how I did not have a vehicle that I could store my stuff in, and I didn't want to have to leave the park, get a ride share, go back to my Airbnb and get something out, and then come back to the park, I chose to bring a backpack. And I tried my best to get a very small backpack and get it as compact as possible, but it would not fit into the teeny tiny, no joke, teeny tiny free lockers. Nothing is going to fit into that. So I had to pay every single time I needed to use a locker. And luckily it was only $3 every single time. But when you're talking about it's every other ride that you choose to ride, and that's the thing is, I did not ride a lot of the rides that require it. I did not ride Transformers. I did not ride The Mummy. Both of those rides require it. The Simpsons requires it. There's way more rides that require you to put your stuff in a locker that I did not ride because I've rode them before at Universal Studios Hollywood. But I ended up spending like 20 something dollars on all these lockers. And it's not just the locker and having to pay for it and having to shove my stuff in there. It's the fact that I'm having to fight for a locker, having to fight for all the other people who are in the way, people trying to figure out how to pay for a locker when there's only one kiosk that you pay on. When there's a line of people to pay for a locker and then you have to fight for your locker and hope nobody accidentally closes it, then it's really hard to get a locker. And I don't want to have to inconvenience myself by putting it in a locker and then leaving and walking all around the park and having to come back to the same spot every time I need a locker. And some of those lockers, the way they work, they have timers. And so if you don't get your stuff out of the locker within that set amount of time, they actually charge you more. So you can't put it in there and walk away for hours on end and come back. Now, there are lockers at the very front of the park that it's $20 for the entire day. But again, I don't want to walk all over the park and have to keep coming back to the same spot to get into my backpack. Now I want to talk about the pros between Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure, because both of them, again, just like the cons, they have the exact same pros. And the first one has to do with the food. I may have had trouble trying to find food. However, the pro is there is a lot of options for food. So you're going to have to try and fight and find time to find the food. However, there's tons of options for food, whether it is American food, Asian food, Hispanic food, there's tons, Mediterranean food, all kinds of food options. And there's food options as far as sit-down restaurant style food and food to go at like one of the little kiosks. So yes, it is hard to find food, but when you find it, there's plenty of options for you. Just like the second, third, and fourth con has to do with the ride, the second, third, and fourth pros have to do with the rides as well. And the first pro is they have some really awesome roller coasters. Now, my personal favorite, I would probably have to say it is Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure Ride, whatever it's called. That ride is just so cool. It's a wonderful roller coaster in and of itself, and then if you're a Harry Potter fan, it's even better. But coming in an extremely close second has to be the Velocicoaster. That roller coaster is sick. It is just so cool. Now, if you're not into that aggressive and that like scary of a roller coaster, because there are times it's pretty scary, not gonna lie, I was screaming, then maybe check out the Hulk roller coaster. And there's plenty of other roller coasters and amazing adventure rides too. The Mummy is always a classic. I always love that ride. Transformers is always a great one. There's plenty of rides around the park that is going to give you a ride for everyone. And speaking of everyone, the second pro has to do with the two parks have some pretty big areas for the kids. You have the Dr. Seuss Landing, I believe is what it's called, where it has tons of rides for the kids. And then you also have the area that has like the Trolls and Kung Fu Panda. Both parks have very large areas for the kids with different food and ride options. They also have arcades and stuff where you can play in both of the parks. So whether you're an adult and wanting to ride roller coasters, or you're a kid and you want to play on some of those rides too, then there is something for everyone when it comes to the rides. And the third pro for the rides has to do with the variety. Yes, I just said there is something for everyone, but there truly is something for everyone. Granted, you do have the overlapping Harry Potter wizarding world. So you do have Hogsmeade and then you have Diagon Alley that are connected by the Hogwarts Express. But without that, you have many other worlds around the two parks. In Universal Studios, you do have like the cities like New York, San Francisco, and Hollywood. You have the Minions area and you have Springfield. You also have in the Islands of Adventure, the island where King Kong is at, Jurassic Park is at, and the whole area with Marvel and all of those rides. There's something for everyone in those lands. And they did a very good job about being able to connect the whole park where it's, continuously moving around, but then you're going from one world to the next, and it's very fluid. I thought they did a really good job with that, especially going from like Marvel and then you end up going over to King Kong and it's got a lot of the jungle, and then from King Kong you're heading over into Jurassic Park. They did a really good job with that, and I feel like the decor there to really emphasize the different lands is really well done in the two parks. And the fifth pro that I want to talk about between the two parks is got to be shade. There was shade. There was tons and tons of shade. And it was wonderful because it was blazing hot. There were plenty of stores that you could kind of duck into around the park and get out of the sun, but there was also shaded areas. Plenty of trees you could sit under, a lot of awnings that you could sit under. There was a lot of shade around the park, which I feel like if it's an amusement park where you're outside, in Orlando, Florida, it gets very, very, very hot, and it also rains a lot too. So having shade in an amusement park can really come in handy, because the last thing you want to be is in an amusement park, it starts pouring down rain, and you are cramped up like this into one of the stores because there's no shade outside. So shade is very important, and those two parts definitely have it.